Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat, and we have a good show for you guys today. We have an interesting show for you guys today. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Penguins at this moment have lost 5 straight games, but we have a lot to talk about in the minutia of that. Obviously, Tristan Jarry goes down with an injury at the Winter Classic. That will be the first thing we talk about. But also, we'll get into later in the show, what do the Pens need to do to end this losing streak? Are we concerned about this team's playoff chances at this moment? And what will the Penguins defense look like at full health, which could be coming up here in the next week or two? So let's start it off with Tristan Jarry, because it looks like, in my opinion, he either pulled something in the first period, which might be the best thing for the Penguins if it was just a pulled groin, or at worst, it just reminds me of the hernia injury that Casey DeSmith faced in game 1 of the playoffs last season, which obviously can require surgery, which would bring him out for a little bit longer. But in the game itself, it was obviously a topic for a solid 5-6 minutes because they weren't getting him out of the net until a commercial break.
Just couldn't.
And they couldn't. And he was struggling a lot to get up and to push from left to right. It didn't look good. He leaves the game, and now he's returned to Pittsburgh to be evaluated. So, Horwat, what were your thoughts when you saw him go down? And then we'll get into everything else as it pertains to the injury.
Well, I mean, first thought was, oh no. Second thought was, not this team. Third thought was, none of these guys can catch a break. I mean, we were playing the game already with a wonky lineup, right? 7 defensemen, 11 forwards, just an unusual decision that we don't need to talk about really, but an unusual decision that showed this team has already got some injury and health issues. The last thing they need is their all-star caliber goalie going down, and down he goes. And not to take anything away from Casey DeSmith, but that was supposed to be a big game for Tristan Jarry, to help turn this team around, turn his little stretch around, and find a good victory for the Penguins. It's really, my main thoughts were, this isn't ideal, and not at this time, because it was because of the stage it was at that could have really meant a lot for the team. You know, it was a bigger opportunity than normal for a victory and to gain momentum. And I'm not going to say they lost it in losing their goal and losing their starting goalie, but it sure didn't help things.
Yeah, and you mentioned something really quickly there that I don't think we can pass over, is the fact that, listen, it's big for Tristan Jarry. Eventually, as a goaltender, you get the tag placed on you that, hey, you're injury prone, which is the last thing, especially as a netminder, that you want to have placed on you. But you look at what's happened, it might just be a stretch of bad luck, but he missed last year's postseason, played in game 7, but realistically, he was not healthy for that game 7. But he missed the end of the regular season and then the beginning of the postseason with an injury. He's now injured once again for what it seems like. And again, we don't know. He's still being reevaluated in Pittsburgh, but it seems like this is going to be a longer injury for Tristan Jarry. At the very least, a couple of weeks. I would say week to week is best case scenario for the Penguins. And when you're in a contract year and that's something that can be used against you, you just hate to see it for a guy like Tristan Jarry. And then for the Pittsburgh Penguins as a whole, I mean, there's such a roller coaster this season, and losing your netminder at the turn of the year when you were trying to turn things around, and the way that the Penguins were playing in that first period as well, that had to factor in to, the game as well, trying to play that defensive mindset and kind of clamp down more so than they would normally, because Casey DeSmith was coming there cold.
Yeah, but the thing is too is this team has a lot of confidence in Casey DeSmith. It's they know he's a good goalie. They know he's a good backup, and the organization and the franchise thinks he's good enough. I mean, they signed him to a 2-year deal this past offseason, which may have been a little shocking to some, but here he is, and he's been decent enough. I mean, sure, maybe we want to see more out of him, but now's the time for that. I mean, bare minimum, we're missing Jarry for 2 games. I'd say at least get back home and see what happens with the Vancouver game on Tuesday. But I mean, for now, it's all touch and go. It seems all of it. I mean, I know we have 1 game and then 2 days off to get to Arizona. It's a damn shame Jarry's gonna miss the experience of Mullet Arena, but I don't know. It's a difficult situation, especially considering for Jarry. Yeah, you're right. It's not the time that you want it to happen. You're fighting for a contract. You're fighting for your team, and I mean, you hate to say that it kind of benefits the Penguins contract negotiation wise. Now all of a sudden you have in a couple different ways. Like A, let's say he's out for a little while and the numbers kind of decrease a little. But B, hey man, this is like the 3rd year in a row you've been hit with a pretty decent injury that we had to really maneuver things. Can you sustain health? But then you start thinking of, well, what's the future of this goaltending position? Because if you can't continue on with an injury-prone goalie, so I mean that's a bigger topic for a bigger day. But how ready are we for our prospects right now? Or I mean, if there's something down the line, that's something I'm sure we'll get into. What could the possibility be of the future in net if Tristan Jarry truly is not healthy enough or truly not the kind of player to sustain health? I don't know. It's one of those weird situations you always have to be mindful of with athletes.
Yeah. I for one, am very happy I don't have to be, the guy to make that call, to make that point in that contract negotiation, because that just feels, especially at this moment, I know it is going to be a factor. You bring up a valid point, but just, to say it and to think about like, oh yeah, this could benefit. It's like, no, I get where you're coming from. Listen, I'm not casting aspersions on you, but just it's something where like, obviously it's unfortunate. And for the Pittsburgh Penguins, this is an organizational issue. I mean, Casey DeSmith was injured for the postseason last year and the year prior. You mentioned, what are the Penguins prospects looking like right now? Philip Lindbergh, for the 2nd straight year, is battling a lot of injuries down there in Wilkes-Barre. So, and he's probably, I mean, if you look at the prospects, he's probably the furthest along in North America. Obviously, Joel Blomqvist, there's a lot of excitement around him, but he is over in Europe once again this season. But in North America, I mean, Lindbergh missed most of last season, and once again, he's down this season, which is why Taylor Gauthier is up at the AHL level. But to shift things to Casey DeSmith, he is now the starter at this moment. Moving forward, the Pittsburgh Penguins are operating with Casey DeSmith as the starter. This season, he has a 4-7-2 record, 2.99 goals allowed average, and a 911 save percentage, which, considering some of the narratives surrounding Casey DeSmith this year and some of the stuff and way that people talk about him, you would think those numbers would be a lot worse. Clearly, the record is not as good as you'd like it to be, but there's also some poor defensive performances in that record as well in front of him. But what do you make of Casey DeSmith moving forward, and how comfortable are you with him as the starter of this team for the time being?
Oh, for the time being, I guess I'm gonna just have to be. I don't know about how comfortable I am, but I have no choice but to be. I think it'll at least be okay. They're in a decent enough spot that the team is confident in this option, right? And I'll give them that. Dustin Tokarski is a backup. Hey, you know what? An NHL journeyman that is going to step in as a 3rd string goalie. Where have we seen this story before?
Somebody got to ask him if he likes spicy pork.
Or Lagasse. What did he do? He shut up the Buffalo Sabres in the final game of the season.
Final game of the season.
Hey, you know what, man? Something big's going to happen for Tokarski just somewhere along the line here. But you know what? It's a good enough situation for the Penguins. Like I said, they're confident in him. They have the belief that he can be good enough to hold down the fort for as long as they need. But if it is a longer term injury, I think you got to think of some move here. I don't think you can sustain Casey DeSmith as a starter for longer than, what would you say, a month?
I would say
Because he's a goalie and doesn't play every game, maybe like a month and 2 weeks, 6 weeks.
Listen, in my opinion, and I looked at the schedule and that's what really you have to do. Look at how busy the month of January is because it really is leading up to the All-Star break
Yeah.
In the first week of February. But I think if you finally get the diagnosis back on Tristan Jarry and he's out past Valentine's Day, which would be 16 games played between now and then, you would have to imagine that DeSmith starts 12 of those 16. Tokarski maybe gets 4 of those if that's the case. Then maybe that's when I would say you have to explore the options.
Yeah.
But also, Ron Hextall's been trying to make a move since the opening of this season. He's been trying to offload. We've heard many names out there. Kapanen, a defenseman, that no matter, depends on who it is. I don't know. But we've heard that a lot of these trade talks are happening, but there hasn't been really a single trade of any significance in the National Hockey League into the month of January. Normally we see at least like a handful in December because teams finally know what they are. But because of the status of the trade market, I understand that desperation is created due to injuries sometimes, and Ron Hextall might have to bite the bullet on some things that he doesn't want to give away for a goaltender. But also, I don't know how long you can go with Casey DeSmith. I do think that he will step up to the challenge. I think he's much better than people give him credit for. I think there are times where he is swimming in the net and it scares the heck out of me.
But he looks to be a lot more confident this year.
But yeah, I think he started at a better place this year than he did last year. And I do think that his issues are a lot more minimal than they were last season as well. I mean, you look at what he did last year whenever, Tristan Jarry went down late in the year. He made 5 starts, went 3-2, had a 2.2 goals allowed average and a 940 save percentage. So he really stepped up to the challenge, and that's not even considering how he was performing in game 1 of the series against the New York Rangers. So, with the trade thing, who can you get to? Like, obviously Jacob Bunturi of Inside the Penguins put out a story about some options, and I'm not even going to say some of the names, but when I looked at them, I was like, they're great options, I feel like, but I don't see those teams parting with those guys unless you're paying second round pick, third round pick. And I don't know if the Pittsburgh Penguins are willing to do that just to get a minimal upgrade over Casey DeSmith.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is just always something that when something like this happens, because the position is so thin, you have to be ready with your options. I think that's more of the thought process here. It is not immediately, hey, we have an injured goalie, moves got to get made. No, it's just the fact that it is such a thin position. I mean, in a team of 22, how many do you travel? 23. In a team of 23, you have 2 of them, sometimes 3. That's it. You are immediately down to, like, when Jarry went down, what was also some of the first camera shots at Fenway Park? Here's Mike Chiasson, the emergency backup goalie that we happened to bring with us, by the way. Which, I mean, that's how thin the position is. It immediately goes to, hey, your next option, if your second goalie gets hurt in the same game or something happens, your third option is something that rarely happens, and when it does, it's the biggest news story. So that's just how thin the position is. Clearly, you have your minor league goalies as well, and your ECHL, and then your prospects. Thing is then it gets weird because NHL contracts are the way that they are. You can't immediately call up certain ECHL goalies even on an emergency basis. You have to loan one of your prospects in.
Yeah.
So you have to be prepared. So I think that's more along the lines of why you have trade discussions is just who can we have at the ready? And then usually you just look for ones on expiring deals and say, thank you for your quick service. Best of luck on your future endeavors.
And here's the thing with that, and then we'll cut the break and come back and talk a little bit more about this losing streak and a little bit more about the rest of the players on the roster is, I feel like the Penguins, and not a lot of people are understanding that whoever they would go out and get, I think it would be very difficult to get somebody that is, you'd be paying a lot to get anybody that is a step up from Casey DeSmith, but also you're probably paying a decent amount at this point for somebody that's around the same skill level and talent level and who's going to give you the same stuff is Dustin Tokarski. Like, let's give Tokarski a little bit of credit here. I think he is much better, in my opinion, than Max Lagacé. I think he is a much better option at this stage of his career than Louis Domingue was last year. I mean, unless he starts trying to catch the puck with both hands,
forgot about that. Oh man,
I'll have bad flashbacks. But what I think people really need to understand is there's a reason that Dustin Tokarski was brought in, and it wasn't to be the starter of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. He was brought in for this very reason. So I know that a lot of people want to say, hey, let's bring in Karel Vejmelka of the Coyotes. Let's just pick him up when we're at Mullet Arena. Just bring him over from that randomly, tent that is a locker room to this tent that is a locker room. But at the same time, this is a thing that has been thought of before. This has already been thought of. This is already an instance that this front office has thought about, prepared for, and this is what they came up with. And it's Casey DeSmith and it's Dustin Tokarski. And that's what we're going to see, in my opinion. Now, if Jarry is out past Valentine's Day, which again is 16 games played, which is about 5 weeks, then I think you start having that discussion of, okay, how much do we like what we prepared for? Like, how much do we like this? And how much has that changed since the beginning of the season? But that's a discussion for whenever we have much more information about Tristan Jarry. As of right now, all we know is it's a lower body injury and he is back in Pittsburgh being evaluated. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, what do the Penguins need to do to end this 5-game losing streak? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Horwat, I want to get your quick reaction. Literally, give me just your first couple of words of thought. Next year's Winter Classic. I'm wearing the Seattle Kraken hat for those watching on Inside the Penguins on YouTube. Next year's Winter Classic, Seattle, Vegas, up in rainy Seattle, Washington. Do you like it? Do you not like it?
I do like it. I don't mind it. I called it, actually.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember. I don't remember. I may have called it before Seattle even had the official name of the Kraken ready. We were probably talking about outdoor games, and I went, Vegas doesn't have one yet. Their first one is going to be against the 32nd team.
They have one.
Oh, then COVID happened, so I called it before COVID.
Yeah, they played in Lake Tahoe against the Avs.
Yeah, okay. I forgot about that. Plus, to be fair, as gorgeous looking as those games were, they were easy to forget. Yeah, I called it a long time ago, and I said they should call it the Expansion Classic, regardless if it's winter or Stadium Series. But there you have it, the Expansion Classic in Seattle, Washington, and honestly, that should be a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it. I think it's obviously it was a layup. Like you called it 2 years ago. Yeah. It was a layup to make this, and I think it's also happening at the right time because Seattle is a very young and entertaining team, and Vegas right now is one of the best teams in the West. And I think by next year, by the beginning of 2024, geez, I can't believe we're that far along. But by the beginning of 2024, they're probably going to be they're already two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Pacific Division. Yeah. They're going to be, I think, the top 2, especially when Matty Beniers hits another stride and when Shane Wright gets his feet underneath him. So I'm excited about that. I'm also in the abolish the Stadium Series as its entirety. Not that I'm not excited for Canes Caps, but I don't think it's necessary. But we digress. Nonetheless, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins losing streak right now, because it is the second losing streak of 5 games or more this season. Obviously, we all remember the 7-gamer that happened in November. But Horwat, what do the Penguins need to do to get on the other side of this thing and to get back in the win column?
Quite simple. It's the Sidney Crosby line needs to show up a little more. Sidney Crosby needs to have points. Jake Gensel needs to find the back of the net. It's been 7 games for him. And, I mean, the defense is what it is, but the star players have to step up and contribute the way they're supposed to. Like I said, Sidney Crosby hasn't gotten a point in 5 games. Jake Gensel hasn't scored a goal in 7. Sure, Raquel's still picking up an assist here and there. Brian Rust is now up on that top line, and screw it, fine. Whatever can get this team going. I don't care who has played with who. I think we're both close to just hitting a complete shuffle button on everything and seeing what comes out at the other end. Because because the fact that we're getting production from Kasperi Kapanen and he's playing 7 minutes a night, I mean, that can go on. Maybe he should be playing a little more. Well, he should, but we'll get into that some other time.
Yeah.
I get in certain situations you don't want him out there, but by God, more than a single shift in a period might be helpful when he's the only one scoring anyway. Yeah, it's up to the star players to play like star players, quite simply. The defense is what it is. It's going to be a little touch and go because of the amount of injuries we have and just how different it is than what it should look like when it's healthy. Mm-hmm. And the goaltending is the goaltending. We just discussed it. They're confident in their guys right now. We can have a further discussion of what this team needs to do whenever we have more Jarry information. But for now, I'm looking at the star players. I'm looking at Crosby, Gensel, Malkin. You could throw Zucker in there. You could throw Rust in there. You could throw Raquel in there. All the top six. Maybe Jeff Carter as well, because he's a star in the league, I guess, longevity-wise. To do something. Produce a little more or produce it all. Because that's what's been killing us. We can't rely on, because our bottom six isn't that great. They just so happen to be the only ones producing at a low pace.
Yeah, when I look at this team, obviously you mentioned the bottom six. I mean, depth scoring is actually coming in. You know, you mentioned Kapanen. Carter had a goal the other game. Drew O'Connor scored a goal in the other game.
And got shafted immediately.
Yeah, but Gensel and Crosby, you know, you're not going anywhere without those guys. You know, they got close Monday. I will say that. When you watch the first period of that game against the Boston Bruins at Fenway Park, I thought the first line played particularly well in that first period, but Linus Ullmark was just, you know, standing on his head and doing just Martin Brodeur-esque things between the pipes for the Boston Bruins. He was stopping everything that came his way. But I thought that was a positive sign for both Crosby and Gensel. You know, I think especially Crosby, you saw him basically take that as a command. And then, of course, you know, when Tristan Jarry goes down, I think that's the other thing. Tristan Jarry went down. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they're at their best when they're playing their defensive style. But as I talked about on the show Penguins to Go earlier this week, you know, it's been a weird week, so I'm forgetting everything about what day. I think it was Mondays or Tuesdays. Penguins to Go. Not that it matters. It's on the feed. The Penguins are at their best when they're playing their defensive style, but not when they're just only doing that. Like, you saw that in that game on Monday, and it was so mind-numbing, especially the third period. Like, I get it. Play defensively. I get it. You have Casey DeSmith, who 1 is a backup goaltender, 2 is coming in cold, and 3 is coming in on a national stage where it cannot be easy against the best team in the National Hockey League in the Boston Bruins. I understand you want to try to protect the house a little bit, but you had a 1-goal lead. A 1-goal lead, and you produced nothing in that third period. I mentioned it on the show on Tuesday. 0 high danger chances in the third period. 0. Not a single one. Linus Ullmark was skating circles like Cat from the Mighty Ducks back there. You know, am I going to get a shot? Maybe not. I'm just going to sit here. There's nothing really happening until the very last second when they finally squeak past, but it's 2 seconds too late. So, you know, that was the biggest issue. I understand you want to stick to your defensive style. I understand that's what's going to get you wins in this league, especially with the age that the Pittsburgh Penguins are. But you need to emphasize getting better throughout the game. I loved the Penguins' effort in the first period. I was a little wary of the Penguins' effort in the second period. And then in the third period, I looked at the Penguins and I said, what is this? What is this? What is this? You know, turtles don't win hockey games, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You cannot turtle. So
look at multiple games that they've lost in this past losing streak. Talk about turtling. You had a 4-0 lead in the first period against the Detroit Red Wings. Now, don't get me wrong. You gave up 2 in the second. If you were able to just pull out 1 goal in the third, we don't have that discussion. We don't talk about a 5-game losing streak. As much as the second period of the Devils game got out of hand, you got to find goals from the right people. And clearly, the first line didn't produce any of that. And it was just kind of all downhill from there. And I can remember sitting watching the Red Wings game, if I take it back to the 4-0 lead again, everyone in that press box knew The second they gave up the second goal, if they didn't get the next one, that was it. This team wasn't going to do it. These guys are there's a lot of people not confident in this team. And I think that's why, when you had this Pens poll not too long ago when you said how confident, but I think you asked how confident are you in this team or what does this team need? I thought to myself, there's people so not confident in this team because there's not that one little bit to push them over the edge. That one little bit is closing out games right now. They can't for whatever reason. It's 3 games in a row where they've lost a lead. I mean, a 1-goal lead's pretty easy to lose in the NHL, but
4?
It's still but 4 is in there. How about having that weird Devils game? And how about you had that 1-goal lead into the third period? You had the chance to close it down. I don't know. I forget how deep into the third it was, but it was deep enough. The fact that there was under 20 minutes left in the game and you couldn't hold it down goes to show. And it was a play that, let's be real, Tristan Jarry may have stopped just coming from behind the net like that. I mean, it's a hard one, but it's a matter of getting or missing the poke check.
Yeah.
Little things, but still, this team needs to figure out closing it down. That's the other thing that goes into turning this team around, shutting down games.
Yeah. Blown leads in the third period in 4 of their past 7 games. Certainly a glaring issue for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But you brought something up, and I want to get to it here. There's a lot of people you mentioned that are concerned with this team. I've been getting a lot of texts, a lot of DMs, a lot of calls about the sky is falling. And we had it earlier this season. They turned it around, and they were one of the best teams in the NHL for a 4 or 5 week span. And we're back again. It's almost like we never left. It's almost like people are forgetting that the Penguins were the best team in hockey for a stretch there.
Yeah.
It's almost like they went from the 7-game losing streak, won 2 games, and went back into this 5-game losing streak at this point with the way that some people are talking. But the question is, and we'll obviously probably have varying opinions on this. Are you concerned about this team missing the playoffs this year?
So I don't know about concerned, but as I look around, I can see where people are coming from. This is all of a sudden, a stacked Metropolitan Division. I think we went into this season thinking a couple of these teams are going to take a step backwards, right? We thought the Devils probably were going to take a step forward, but not this big. We thought the Rangers were probably going to take a step back. The Capitals are probably going to take a step back. Hell, I thought the Blue Jackets might fight for a spot. No, as a matter of fact, a number of teams in this division took a massive step forward, like the Devils, like the Islanders. And now all of a sudden, like the Capitals, it is a 6-team race for 3 to 4 or 5 spots. Yeah, that's not ideal. So a very good team somewhere along the way here is going to miss the playoffs. If the Penguins aren't good enough in certain situations, in certain spots, and I mean, maybe let's say they can't close out overtime games because they already have 6 overtime losses. I mean, if they can't close out these games, they're going to be that odd team out. I mean, plus you have to still consider the Atlantic.
Yeah.
One of those teams could pop off and steal a wild card spot, making it 4 teams that get in from the Metro. I'm assuming the Atlantic won't have 2 teams that get wild card spots. That just doesn't sound like it's going to happen. But in a 6-dog race and 4 teams make it, 2 teams that are very good, who knows? That could be Washington as well. It could be Pittsburgh and Washington missing that. The Metro's in a weird spot right now, and I can see where people are coming from with their concerns. Do I think the Penguins are going to miss the playoffs? Off the top, no. Because you don't doubt Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. But at the same time, I see where people are coming from. This is a very good division we're playing in.
My answer to this question is no. No, I'm not concerned. About them missing the playoffs? No. They are 2 points out at this current moment. And it is January 5th. There's a lot of hockey left to be played. And they're not 6, 7, 8 points out.
Right.
They're 2 points out. There's a lot of divisional hockey left to be played. You talk about that. They've played the Islanders once. They've played the Devils once. They played the Rangers once. There are a lot of opportunities for them moving forward. This fan base needs to chill the F out. Take your headspace out of this current losing streak for 1 second, because I feel like that's what a lot of Penguins fans have an issue doing. We've lost 5 in a row. They lost 7 in a row earlier. Are you forgetting that this was the best team in hockey in December? And it was not particularly close. Take your head out of your ass and out of this current 5-game losing streak and look at the bigger picture. Try to even out this roller coaster of streaks that the Penguins have had all season long and say to yourself, is this a team that I can consider top 8 in the East? They don't need to be top 5. They don't need to be top 3. To get into the postseason, they need to be top 8. Are they better than the Washington Capitals? I think at full health, at full strength, yes. Are they better than the New York Islanders? Full strength, full health, yes. Same with the Rangers. Now, I understand that's a fairy tale world. Pittsburgh Penguins, until I die, will probably never be fully healthy. That's probably something that will happen. But you are missing your top 2 defensemen on the right side. You're missing 3 of your top 4 defensemen on the right side. You get Letang back. You get Petry back, which could happen in the next week or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel are not going to be this bad for very long.
No, they just need to figure it out sooner rather than later. That's kind of the only point I was making there, is that this team is not going anywhere without them, because the depth scoring is not where it should be still. Mm-hmm. Where like they're scoring, yeah, but like I said, it's not at the same pace. And another thing too is, you're right, I'm with you here. Like I don't think they're going to make it. I can just see the concerns. Think of this too. I don't know how much, I don't know how much weight you put into this. I wrote a story about this last night. Just shared it like as you were speaking. The Penguins are still among the betting favorites. In case you were curious,
Vegas has faith.
Yeah, Vegas has faith. I mean, there are 2. Oh, and by the way, it's betting favorites to win the cup, not just make the playoffs or win games. It is to win the damn thing. I mean, I don't know how much faith you put in numbers and make that a real discussion point, but that's something. It is something that you can throw a couple of bucks down on the Pittsburgh Penguins right now and take it. I believe they're plus 1,800. If that means anything to you, I know nothing about it, but I know
it's good odds.
Those are good odds. That's all I need to hear. It's within the top 10, and that's a step in the right direction. Yeah, there's 2 teams in the Metro above them in those odds. Mm-hmm. I believe it's the Devils and the Rangers, or maybe Carolina.
Hurricanes. I was the Hurricanes.
It's Hurricanes, yeah. My bad, it's Hurricanes. But still, they are among the betting favorites. And that's another thing to take into account here, that not only should you not be concerned about them missing the playoffs, because they're most likely not going to. I can just understand where people are coming from. Maybe one of these teams falls off. Like I said before we played them, the Devils are falling back to earth a little bit. I don't suspect they're going to maintain the same skill they have. They're a great team. Yeah, they're a fast team. Yes, something about them still doesn't click with me, but that's just me. And who knows, the Islanders are the Islanders. New coach, they make the playoffs. He's Jack Adams winner. Could be a bunch of different things. And at the pace of Ovechkin's scoring, though, I mean, the Capitals are going to be fine. There's some weird things going on in the Metro, and they're all very good. The Penguins just need to find themselves, and they can do that very easily.
So the Penguins are currently on a 5-game losing streak. The last thing I will say about everybody that is doom and gloom right now, this is the end of a very tough stretch of games for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We talked about it in December when they started this. It was 10 games against a lot of playoff teams and against a lot of playoff teams in the Metropolitan Division. And yeah, they played pretty well at the first half of that. And yes, they've struggled in the second half of that. But let's not forget the fact that even though they have given up leads, that means they had leads in these games. That's a big thing. The only game they didn't show up in for the full 60 was New York. The first game off of Christmas break, which do with that information what you will. You can call it, not being ready to play out of a break. You can call it being lackadaisical. You could call it just basically no showing. That is the only game in which I have watched and I said there are no redeeming qualities for this team. Every other game.
P.O. Joseph.
Yep. P.O. Yeah, okay. P.O. Joseph. Fair point. P.O. Joseph. But every other game, there's a reason this team we're talking about them not holding on to leads. It's because they've gotten out to leads. they've shown, hey, we can outplay anybody in this league. So I just feel that people really need to chill out. Like they just try. I know it's hard. Try to take yourself out of what you're watching right now in this 5-game losing streak and try to look past the box scores. I've seen that a lot of that too. People that are like, oh, they lost 5 in a row. They gave up. Look past the box scores. Stop being a headline fan and actually think about the greater just area of the team and what they've looked like in these games. Because yes, they've looked bad at points, but they've also looked very good at points. And that's while their best players are not performing to their standard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at the games they have coming up too. Like you said, it's the harder stretch is coming to an end after Vegas, because then we got Arizona, Vancouver, Winnipeg's doing okay, Carolina, we know. Then Anaheim, Ottawa, New Jersey again, Florida, Washington. That's to finish out the month. Oh, sorry, I'm missing San Jose in there.
Yeah,
that's to finish out the month before the bye week.
Yeah, then you do the San Jose, Anaheim, LA trip, which LA is the only team of any, that's a tough trip for the Penguins always. But, realistically, you should be winning against San Jose and the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah.
But, we all know how that goes. But nonetheless, I think as Nick Horwat's idol, Aaron Rodgers, once said, relax, everybody. Relax. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about the Penguins defense and what that might look like at full health, because it's coming down the pike. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm Nick Brlansky, along with noted Green Bay Packers fan Nick Horwat, and we're talking about the Penguins defense, looking at what they could look like at full health, because I feel like it's going to look a lot different than it did at the beginning of the season whenever they entered with full health, and I think that I might have something in the bottom pairing that not a lot of people would agree with. Or not, maybe people will agree with, but maybe not a lot of people are thinking of at this very moment. But Horwat, let's start with the first pair. I think we're going to do this pair by pair. I'll tee you up. First pair, right side. I think it's pretty obvious that it's going to be Chris Letang.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been for like 16, 15 years now.
Yeah.
Maybe a few less, just because we had some pretty solid defensemen whenever he was young. But anyway, I'd say it's Chris Letang. Easy as that.
Yeah, and I know we mentioned it earlier that Chris Letang is on bereavement leave due to the death of his father, Claude. We obviously have our thoughts with his family in this difficult time. But I really think, it has been this past month for Chris Letang has been something that you never wish upon your greatest enemy. So I think it's pretty obvious that he is the Masterton nominee for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I would not be surprised if he has the Masterton. I know that at the end of the day that means very little, but it is something that I think the Pittsburgh Penguins are planning on definitely nominating. But right side, Chris Letang, top defenseman on the right side. It's obvious. The left side, this is where you can start to get a little bit of differences. I have P.O. Joseph as my number one defenseman on the left side when all healthy.
And that's something I know a lot of people want. And I think he really is building into that game of being at that caliber of a top-level defenseman. Mm-hmm. I don't totally disagree. I think he's almost there. And then I know that people love the Pettersson-Petry line. I think I'm going to agree with you on P.O. Joseph as the top line there. Just because it's kind of what the people want. I always look back at the LA Kings formula from a long time ago. They had Drew Doughty. I forget what side he's on, but he was their top guy. And then one year, I forget who it was exactly, they filtered in a young defenseman over a couple of more veteran players. And the D pairing ended up taking off and being pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I think it might have been Slava Voinov.
I'm talking far after that.
Oh, okay.
In the past 4 years or so.
I was not a guy that I particularly want to bring up, but that's who came to mind.
No, I think this is in the past 4 years or so. It was, if I could even remember, I'd be proud of myself, but I'm not going to be able to. But it was a young player playing with a guy like Drew Doughty, and I think they're still doing that now.
I mean, there's so much youth on that team.
Yeah, it's as I pull up their roster, it may have been like Matt Roy or something. I don't remember. Regardless, it's something that the Penguins can try and pull off here as well.
Yeah, I feel like P.O. Joseph has earned that opportunity. There is a reason why it was P.O. Joseph and Chris Letang for a lot of training camp, practicing together, working on the same line, working together on chemistry, on communication, and everything like that. And I think when you watch the past couple of games, in this 5-game losing streak in particular, the best player on the blue line has been P.O. Joseph. I mean, he's turned into a very solid two-way option for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The puck moving has always been there, but now he's starting to get counting stats as well in recent weeks. So it's nice to see, and I think he's earned the opportunity to get an extended look alongside Chris Letang whenever he does return to the team. Moving over to the second pairing, and you know what? It's obvious again for the right side, and it's Jeff Petry. I don't know if you have anything else on it. I don't. I think it's just, it's Letang and Petry on the right side when I'm fully healthy, and there's not much discussion in my head to be had on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, and you don't even need to get too deep into the minutia of their game or how good or bad they are analytically or the counting stats and all that. You don't need to do all that.
No.
Because it is pretty much namesake 1-2. It is salary 2-1, but they're paying Jeff Petry a good amount of money. They're not going to put him on the third line and give him 5 to 8 minutes. Mm-hmm. So and because I mean that's probably part of the reason why Brian Dumoulin's been in for this long. Is that they're paying him money. Why would they pay that much money in the press box? It's a hard decision to make whenever you finally sit down a guy that makes that much. That's why we were all shocked last year when Kapanen got the scratches, and into this year he's making a pretty good paycheck that you want to play. So I think that also plays a hand in Jeff Petry, but he's also just that good. So number 2 guy.
Yeah, you could take out the stats. You could take out everything else. You could take a fan from, let's say, the Seattle Kraken who just became a fan of hockey, and you say, in the year and a half that you've watched hockey, look at this 8 players, or look at these 4 players that play on the right side of the Penguins defense. Who are the top 2? Yeah, everybody's going to say Letang and Petry, and sometimes it is just that easy. But on the left side, we said Joseph on the first pairing. I think we're both in agreement then here that it's Marcus Pettersson, second pairing left defenseman. Honestly, if you take the entire season into account, I know Joseph has been their best defenseman over the past 5, but the entire season-wise, I think Marcus Pettersson has been incredible for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You could argue that he should be on that top pair with Chris Letang, but I also believe that when he's with Jeff Petry, they are one of the most outstanding pairs in the National Hockey League. You look at what they've done analytically in 28 games together. They have 52% shot attempts when on the ice at 5-on-5, 60% of the expected goals for, 59% of the scoring chances for. And to make all of that make a little bit more sense and why that, those numbers are great in a vacuum. There's one other number that when you put that up against these and say they're connected, it makes you realize how absolutely absurd these two were playing. 25% offensive zone start percentage. 75% of the time they're starting in their defensive zone, yet they have over 60% of the expected goals for. It is ridiculous how good those guys have been in year 1 of Jeff Petry with the Penguins, and in a year where a lot of people didn't think Marcus Pettersson would still be with this team.
Transitioning from defense to offense. It's something that the third line has to do all the time. Third offensive line has to do all of the time, and it kind of hurts their numbers, but at least those 2 on the back end are able to do it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous when you get into the minutia of how good that pairing is. And we saw it at the beginning of the season. We're like, Petry and Pettersson, it's going to be an interesting pairing. Don't know how it's going to work. Well, it's one of the best defensive pairings in the National Hockey League. And if you say otherwise, just message me and I'll set you straight. But third pairing, I'm very like on edge today. Yeah. Prickly. Third pairing, again, literally in my notes, I have obviously part 2 and obviously part 3 for the right side. Jan Ruda.
Yeah. We paid him the money. We signed him this year. He's not going to play anywhere else unless he plays up in the lineup.
Yeah. And obviously everybody loves watching In the Room. The last one had a little bit of a highlight on Jan Ruda walking through the holiday market in Market Square. If you haven't watched it, I would say that you should. He just seems like a fun guy.
Big wine guy.
Big wine guy. Him and Dumoulin. Big wine guys.
Well, you know.
But nonetheless, no, Jan Ruda has been great. You know, the size is exactly what Brian Burke and Ron Hextall wanted. And I also think that he's been put in a lot of difficult situations. He's basically been the garbage man for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You know, hey, Brian Dumoulin's having a hard time. Jan, it's time for you to turn him around. We're going to strap him next to you. Oh, P.O. Joseph trying to get his feet underneath him, trying to get his feet wet in the NHL. Jan, yeah, we're going to put you up there.
Jan, everyone's hurt. You're now the first line right defense. Have fun, buddy.
Yep.
Yeah, no, he's been put in awful situations all year, and it's one of the downsides of staying healthy, but he's been pretty good. We can't argue it. He's earning, I don't know, not too many people, I'm assuming, said that he's getting paid too much, because he's really not. That's good third line money, 2.75. The second we signed it, I said, this is a great deal. He's not going to play too many minutes. He's not making a ton of money, and he's coming off of 3 straight trips to the Cup final. He knows how to play playoff hockey.
Mm-hmm.
He's 32 and playing for 3 years, and that, you don't like seeing that kind of age get pushed in. But I loved the deal, and it's paying off.
Yep. So let's talk about third defense pairing, left side, which we talked about for a solid month and a half, 2 months leading up to the season as who's going to be there, who's going to get that spot. Who do you have? Because I'll go last. Who do you have at full health, third pairing, left side?
It's difficult because you want to. Yeah, no, screw it. Ty Smith. They've shown that they have faith in him. I mean, they're sticking him on the first power play unit as not phenomenal as he is. He's not ready for that position yet, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
But as much as that is, he's getting the playing time. He's getting that kind of confidence. He came up and was immediately thrown in there. Mm-hmm. Shocking. I get Petry wasn't there, but they showed to have a little more confidence in Ty Smith in that position than they did P.O. Joseph, who may have been an option. Put Ty Smith on the second, learn him into the power play, but they showed to have confidence in this guy by putting him on the first one. I get neither of them are converting, but that's confidence regardless. This is a team that is confident in their power play. When it went 0 for 9, Mike Sullivan said he found it hard to be critical, and I think the whole room went, we can find ways. But still, it was they're showing confidence in Ty Smith, and I think he's the one that steps in there. And as for Dumoulin, when this team is fully healthy, maybe the trade deadline is come and gone. There you go.
Yeah, it is. It is growing ever closer. Is the trade deadline for the NHL? I liked what I've seen from Ty Smith in his first 2 games. I do.
Yeah.
I think there's a clear future with this kid. I hope the Pittsburgh Penguins can strike a deal with him and have him continue his progress in Pittsburgh. I hope he's, understanding why he was sent to the minors and why they wanted him to work on some things. And I hope that he understands when they do it again, because I think that's what's going to happen. When fully healthy, I want Mark Friedman is the third pairing left defenseman.
Ooh.
I don't think I'll get that personally. I honestly think that they're going to ride or die with Dumoulin until, the wheels. The wheels have completely fell off. They're going to ride or die with him until the wheels are shipped to a different city. But I don't think there's a need for Dumoulin to be in the lineup anymore. I understand that you're paying him $4.1 million, but
that's like the only reason at this point.
You're paying $82 million this season anyway. Why force yourself to watch bad hockey? Why force yourself to handcuff your team when it's $4.1 million, but at the end of the year that drops off the payroll. And if you can get it off the payroll earlier than that, I suggest you do so. But with Mark Friedman, I like what I've seen with Ty Smith, but Mark Friedman brings a different element to this game. Yep. I think when you put Friedman and Ruda together, it's a defense pairing that has the ability to move the puck. I think it's a defense pairing that has the ability to get a little bit nasty, especially when they're going to be going up against the bottom 6 of other teams. Get a little bit nasty because you're going to get nasty right back in your face. I love what I've seen from him, and he's an expected goals god. So even the analytics love him. I really think that Mark Friedman is undervalued on this team. I understand Chad Ruhwedel has been the seventh defenseman for the longest time. I understand that, it would be a slap in the face to Chad Ruhwedel to send him down. But I really think that Mark Friedman has earned the right to be in this lineup. And I know I'm not going to get it. And I know I might be speaking to the void right now, but I really think Mark Friedman brings an edge to the game that the Penguins don't have anywhere else except for with Josh Archibald, who's currently on the shelf. I think you need both of those guys in there, because if you turn your power play around, these two guys, I tweeted it and you had a great response in the middle of that Detroit game. These two guys might have the Penguins on 5-6 power plays a game alone with just the way that they play the game and the way they get under people's skin. And I know that's not the end all be all for a defenseman, but as a third pairing defenseman on the left side next to a stout guy like Jan Ruda, I love everything Mark Friedman brings to the game. And I hope that he gets a better chance, and I think that he deserves it over Brian Dumoulin. And for the time being, I think he's more steady than Ty Smith. I do. I think he brings more to you, especially with the fact that you're going to have Casey DeSmith as your starting goaltender for what may be as little as 1 week, but maybe as much as 5 or 6 weeks. So I like Mark Friedman in that role for this team at this moment, if they can get fully healthy, with Chris Letang and Jeff Petry, who, like we mentioned, they're both certainly on their way back. So if they ever get to full health on the blue line, I like Mark Friedman on the left.
Yeah, I don't totally hate that either. I mean, you got him for this year and next year, Mark Friedman. You can cycle him in at any point. And maybe he's only 27. Maybe a couple years down the line, this defense is taking a whole different shape. Mm-hmm. Maybe the left side one day looks P.O. Joseph, Ty Smith, Mark Friedman. I don't know how many years down the line that will be, and that's obviously post Marcus Pettersson. But you kind of get an idea of what the left side could be, and then your right side. I mean, Chris Letang will be there until the day we all die. Maybe Jeff Petry's moved on because I forget where he's at. So maybe that's someone else.
He has a few years left on that contract.
Yeah, but I don't know how far down the line I'm talking here.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's Letang, someone. Who knows what this team looks like in a couple years? Maybe one of these guys becomes great trade bait too. You never know what this team could look like far down the line, but you got time with Mark Friedman still, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't think Hextall is going to want to give him up that easily.
Yeah, I don't think it happens this season, but if there ever is a year in the next 3 that the Pittsburgh Penguins are just out of playoff contention at the deadline, somebody's going to dish out some money for Jan Ruda. Somebody's going to dish out some good picks for Jan Ruda. Also for probably a guy like Mark Friedman. I mean, these guys are valuable trade pieces, but the problem is the Pittsburgh Penguins aren't sellers. Get that out of your mind. Throw it back to the second segment if you want my opinion on where the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be at the end of the season. I'm a little testy today, Horwat, but that's going to do it for this one. We will be back next week with obviously all new episodes of the Pittsburgh Penguins Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast. And we didn't do it this episode. I meant to do it and then completely forgot about it because this week's been crazy. We're going to give our power rankings for the Metropolitan Division for the month of January. That's going to do it for this one, though. We will see you guys next week. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the game on Saturday. And we will see you later, Pens fans.